A. Antipathies and aversions.
Antipathy is a feeling of strong, often active dislike or opposition towards something or someone. For example, antipathy towards the government increased during the economic crisis. Aversion is a feeling of intense dislike or an unwillingness to do something. It can also refer to the person or thing which causes that feeling. It is often used in the phrase have or feel an aversion to. For example, I felt an instant aversion to the new manager. Arrogance has always been my pet aversion. Averse to means opposed to, usually used with not. For example, I'm not averse to a good night out.
B. Negative feelings.
Loathing, loathsome, loathe. Intense hatred. For example, I just loathe people who tell lies. Abhorrence, abhorrent, abhor. Intense disgust. For example, we all find her behaviour abhorrent. Scorn, scornful, scorn. Lack of respect for something. For example, there was a scornful note in his voice. Irritation, irritating, irritated, irritate. A feeling of being annoyed. For example, her comments gave me an intense feeling of irritation. Distress, distressing, distressed, distress. A feeling of being extremely upset or worried. For example, being told that my best friend was seriously ill was very distressing. Alarm, alarming, alarmed, alarm. A feeling of being very worried or frightened. For example, the advance of the enemy troops across the river was an alarming development.
C. Adjectives with negative connotations. She was very offhand with everyone.
The director's personal assistant can be very officious.
He makes very ostentatious displays of his wealth with big, flashy cars, designer clothes, and so on.
She's become very pompous since she was elected to Parliament.
She boasts about reading philosophy books. She's so pretentious.
What puerile behaviour! Grow up!
Because I rushed it, my essay was a bit sloppy.
Joe can be very fickle.
Oh, stop being so nitpicking.
The customs officer was such an obnoxious man.
D. Being extremely unhappy.
I felt utterly dejected when I didn't get the job.
She looked forlorn, gazing into the distance.
I was devastated when I heard of the death of a good friend of mine.
The missing child's parents were distraught. The neighbours tried to calm them.
You're looking a bit down today. Anything wrong?
He always looks so miserable and never seems to smile.
A. At the beginning.
Pregnancy is the 9-month period when a woman is expecting a baby. It begins with conception when the mother's egg is fertilized and an embryo implants in the mother's womb or uterus. Most mothers conceive naturally, but some are helped by fertility drugs or other procedures such as IVF. As the fetus grows, it is fed through the mother's placenta. After 40 weeks, the mother usually goes into labour. If this doesn't happen naturally, she may be induced. Usually a mother is helped to give birth by a midwife. Sometimes a surgeon is needed to deliver the baby by caesarean section.
B. At the end.
More and more people these days are living to a ripe old age. My aunt, for example, that's my late father's sister, is 93. She's been a pensioner for more years than she worked. She lives in sheltered accommodation, but she's not at all doddery or gaga. She's lucky still to have all her wits about her because a lot of elderly people develop dementia. Funerals are changing a lot too. I went to one recently where there was a coffin in the colours of the dead man's football team. And at the wake, his sister told me she'd put it in her will that her own ashes are to be sent up in a rocket. Funerals now are often more about celebrating a person's life rather than just about mourning. As for me, I think I'd prefer an ordinary cremation. But then I'd quite like to have my ashes scattered at sea, as I love sailing.
C. Death in different registers.
Expressions of sympathy. Please accept my condolences. Formal. I was so sorry to hear of your loss. I was so sorry to learn of your loss. Informal. Euphemisms for to die. To pass away, to pass on, to pass over. Very informal expressions for being close to death. To be at death's door, to be on your last legs. Newspaper words. Fatalities. Perished. Slaughtered. Legal words. The deceased. To bequeath. To inherit. To die intestate.
A. Adjectives describing free time activities. Rewarding. Gives you a lot of positive experiences. For example, doing voluntary work, helping charities. Fruitful. Produces good results. For example, collaborating or cooperating with someone in an activity. Lucrative. Makes a lot of money. For example, selling designer jewelry, writing apps for smartphones. Therapeutic. Makes you healthy in body and or mind. For example, gardening, yoga, jogging. Relaxing or calming. Reduces stress, gives a peaceful feeling. For example, reading, listening to music, meditation. Time-consuming. Takes a long time to do. For example, being president of a club, being a member of a committee. I enjoyed being secretary of the sports club, but it was very time-consuming. I had to give up 2 evenings a week to do it.
The conservation work I do is very rewarding. I feel I'm doing something good and useful.
Photography has been a lucrative pursuit for her. She often sells her pictures to magazines.
Painting is such a therapeutic activity. It makes me feel good and teaches me patience.
B. Informal expressions. How people spend their leisure.
Rob's a real culture vulture. He goes to the theatre regularly and to every art gallery he can find.
I'm a bit of a couch potato. I spend hours every day just watching TV.
Lucy loves playing tennis, but only as an amateur. She'd never want to be a professional.
Fatima's a bit of a dabbler. She takes up a hobby for a couple of weeks, then she gets bored and starts something different.
Matt does a lot of chores at the weekend. Things like shopping and mowing the lawn.
Laura's a shopaholic. She buys all sorts of things she doesn't need.
Joe is heavily into downhill skiing these days.
I went off football and I took up golf instead.
She locks herself away for hours in her room and listens to music.
He's totally hooked on motor racing these days.
What do you get up to at weekends, Mariana?
Do you have a hectic social life? I have a pretty full diary.
Mark is a keen participant in all the community activities in his town.